Please believe me when you receive extra attention. I guess you stressed, arrived overdressed, not your intention. You know the story, it's too hard for me. Don't make me spell it out again. 'Cause now I see the wood from the trees, my revelation.
Hello and welcome to episode 12 of Harmonious World. This is the first episode of series 9. Can't believe I've got to series 9 on this podcast, which I started as something to do during lockdown, and it's just taken on a life of its own, and I love it. And I particularly love this episode. I'm interviewing the charismatic jazz vocalist Emma Smith. I know her family well, and that will come out a little bit in our conversation, I'm sure. But I hope you enjoy listening to our conversation. What you are hearing now is My Revelation, which is track 7 on Meshuga Baby, which is out now. There's a lot to talk to Emma about, and I hope you enjoy listening to our conversation. Welcome to the latest episode of Harmonious World. I am delighted to be joined by singer-songwriter Emma Smith. Hello.
Hello. Emma. Thank you for having me.
No, it's a great pleasure. Brilliant. And we've discovered that I know your parents and I knew your grandfather very well. So that's really nice as well.
That's amazing. It's really, really special.
Yeah. So tell me about this album. For a start, how do you pronounce it? Is it Meshuga Baby?
It's Meshuga Baby, exactly. That's exactly correct.
I love the cover versions that you've done, but I absolutely adore the originals. I think your songs, my favourite are My Revelation and Ballad of a Wayward Woman. I love both of those things. Great.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's I actually didn't want to put originals on the album at all. I had such a bad sort of self-image of how, you know, this jazz album would be received if there was originals on it, and I just thought, I really shouldn't. And Jamie, my long-term collaborator, Jamie Safir, the piano player and like co-arranger and co-writer of everything, I was like, oh God, do we have to, sort of thing? And he's like, we really do, because he was thinking about PRS and stuff, and I was just thinking about the album being a success. But I'm really, really glad we did, because they feel so intrinsic and important to the record in really kind of that expression of self through the music and through the journey of the album. And it's a long record, there's 13 tracks on it, but they are all important tracks, and it wouldn't be the same without the originals. And funnily enough, they've been the ones that have had the most sort of plays and radio time since its release. Yeah,
because although your arrangements are very interesting, the cover versions, that they're classics, aren't they? They're in the songbook, and they're ones that a lot of singers do and have done. What you do, I think, especially on There's No Business Like Show Business, that's a really interesting version. So I want to talk to you about that in a minute. But I think the album as a whole, I think that yours fit really nicely in with it. So I'm really glad you did put those in.
I think we actually had quite a lot of the covers, well, the arrangements dotted out already. So Jamie and I had arranged No Business, and we'd arranged, was it I Don't Care, that feel some of these songs, you know, we've done them in such a different way, and we've performed them live so much before we recorded them. Some of them were just fresh on the day, but that they feel like originals now. You know, I feel myself in I Don't Care. I feel that female that just really doesn't give a and it's really awesome to be able to sing that music. I mean, that song was written by a woman in 1910. obviously sung famously by Judy Garland. We released the album around Judy Garland's 100th birthday, and they just feel there's a very blurred line between my originals feeling almost like old songs and then the old songs feeling like originals. It's very confusing.
Absolutely. And it does feel like it's a woman's perspective on life, isn't it? That's
Totally.
in this album, which I love. Obviously.
Totally what it is. And that's what the title represents as well, you know. I wanted to do a play on Yiddish words, on a Yiddish word, and I was gonna, and the word Meshuga or Meshugana, it's a Yiddish word for a crazy person, or you know, Meshugana is what people that speak Yiddish or in the Yiddish Jewish community would be like, oh, there's that Meshugana over there, the person who is the crazy one. And so much of my life has been spent being told I'm a crazy woman because I have big dreams. I go out, I set myself the task of actually achieving those, which is so shocking and unusual. I'm very ambitious. I'm loud. I know what I want. I get what I want most of the time because I make it happen, etc. And having grown up as those things being something that I've been teased about, it was time for me to kind of just turn that around in a tongue-in-cheek way and name myself that, you know.
Yeah.
And when I was thinking about the title, I was going to call it Meshuga Daddy because of the, you know, the sugar sound in that word. And then I thought, no, because there's a chance that some people out there might think that it was paid for by a man. But I want it to be known that I self-funded this album and I, you know, I did everything myself. I'm unsigned. And so, yeah, I'm my own Meshuga Daddy. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. But is it, you know, we know about the women who have these vanity projects that are paid for by a man and everything. And this is absolutely not that. And the content is not that either. The content is not, you know, oh, thank you for everything you've given me, whoever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it's actually like, this is who I am. And while you were talking, it's really interesting because obviously I know your mum and your dad, and I can see them both in you.
Really?
But yes, but you are very much your person. And they'd love, I mean, obviously they would celebrate that. The fact that you've taken what you've been, you know, your heritage, whatever, but you've actually made it your own. And you know, I've been aware of your career for several years, but this feels like a proper, almost like a coming out. This is almost like, here we go. Yeah. This is who I am. And I heard you've had a couple of plays on Jazz FM and things, haven't you? So
this is my arrival. And what's interesting about the way I've done it, so I'm 31 now, and I have been singing on a professional stage since I was about 16, and that mostly was because of my granddad, who you knew, and he was a trombone player, and he used to play with the likes of Sinatra and Shirley Bassey, Oscar Peterson, Johnny Dankworth, and he started his own big band. So I kind of grew up in the old-fashioned way in music of doing it in real life, as opposed to conservatoire study, bedroom, YouTube tutorials. I was like on stage, and I remember so clearly one of my most vivid memories when I started getting, you know, serious was my granddad made the singers do a dominant 7 arpeggio, 1 3 5 flat 7, and sing one dum 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 da, right? And I got the flat 7, and I think I was 16 years old, and I couldn't pitch it. And he didn't sing it to me. He just went, because my granddad was a very unusual man, and he was like 1 3 5 flat 7, and pointed at us to sing them, and I couldn't do it, and it was in front of the entire big band, and that really triggered the sort of shaping of me becoming a musician singer. And it definitely wasn't in the most sort of empowered setting. No, it wasn't. And my granddad was like that. He was a fierce, ferocious, sometimes scary man. And I practiced singing all varieties of arpeggios with 7s and 9s and 11s and 13s until I could sing you them all at the click of a finger with no kind of like support of hearing it before I sang it. and thus began my sort of education in music. So there was this really, I mean, it sounds a little bit like the film Whiplash, and I'm not going to lie, it kind of was in some ways. People always jest about that, but that was kind of what it was like for me. And then I went to the Purcell School, and then I went to the Royal Academy, but I was always gigging, and that kind of ran through my entire like musical education. However, when I left college, I went straight, and I was so lucky that I got the gig with the Papini sisters. But I then spent my 20s, the entirety of my 20s, gigging and being a sideman. And then I got the chair to share the role as the singer with the Ronnie Scott's All Stars. And I've been touring with these amazing, like, properly established acts as somebody who's like, oh, one day I want to do my own album. So long story short, this sort of 10, 15 years chunk of working and gigging and being on stage in a variety of settings has led me to release my album later, whereas most singers, especially being a front person, would release their album early and then try and get a career off the back of that. And I've done it completely the other way around. So I really know, I have total clarity that this record is what I want, is what I love, is what I'm committed to. Does that make sense as to the upside down journey?
Yeah. And I think that is what allows you to arrange those standards, those classics, in a very different way, because you are addressing that as a musician, not as a singer. So you're addressing it as, how can we play with those melodies and the rhythms as well. I think you do more than just play with the melodies, you play with the rhythms as well, and I like that. And that is a musician's approach.
It's because I'm a frustrated drummer. my wonderful drummer Luke Tomlinson on the album, I've been playing with him since he was like 22. No, gosh, 19. I can hear him saying, no, I've known you for much longer than that. But when we first started working together, I was so very similar to my granddad. I was militant about like when he played the snare and when he moved to the ride and when he was on brushes and at what point he was comping with me and at what point he was like improvising with me. I mean, it was a bit much probably in hindsight. However, I am very much a frustrated drummer, and I use my voice and consonants of words to be my percussive tool.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's because you also play around lyrically. So with No Business, you don't start with the first line of the lyric.
No.
And I was like, I had to keep sort of rewinding, thinking, have I missed a bit?
I love that, Hilary. That's amazing. Brilliant. Yeah. No, you hadn't missed it. It was on purpose.
Yeah. And I love that, because you're playing around with it. And I would much rather hear a different version, an arranged personal version, than, someone doing something in just a slightly different way.
Well, I mean, Ethel Merman did it once and for all. That was it.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless you can embody that song in the way that Jamie and I did, like I took in that lyric and I found myself in it. And I'm sure the reason why it's connecting with people, especially when we do it live, which I'll come on to in a bit, but it connects with people because they see themselves in it. That's why I chose the opening lyric to be, there's no people like show people. We smile when we are low. Because that is it. You go on stage anyway. The show must go on. I mean, we've heard this concept and it's banded around in showbiz like the show must go on, put your happy face on, stick a face on and go on stage. But in reality, that is exhausting and painful and inauthentic and necessary and all the things. That's how we make our money. You're not going to go on with a face like a smacked ass and get paid. It's just a concept that is thrown away. And I wanted to pause on it. And that's why it's a 7-minute ballad with no solos, because I wanted to sit in as close to meditation as possible and allow that performer, whether it be an actor, a dancer, or whoever, a teacher, the teachers go and do the same things. and I wanted them to exist in that and for the listener to honor them. And that's why I do it at 50 BPM, 50 beats per minute, as opposed
Yeah.
to there is no business, like, it's very
Yeah.
important to me.
Yeah. And it's haunting and it's mesmerizing. And I think it's that, you've slowed it down, you've played with the lyrics, you've made it your own. And I think as you say, you could do the show version and that would be great. And I'm sure it would be lovely. And people would go, yeah, that's good. She's a great singer. But that's not what you've done here. And that's why I love this album.
Oh, thank you. I'd love to hear that.
So tell me the mechanics. When did you write the originals and when did you record everything?
Oh God, it's so varied. For example, Monogamy Blues, which was inspired by the lyrics of Making Whoopee. It's like a 2022 version. That was written a while ago. That was one of the first things Jamie and I wrote together. And then something like your favorite, My Revelation, I wrote it in lockdown, just thinking about Connor Chaplin, the incredible darling of the double bass who's on the album. And then Ballad of a Wayward Woman, I'll be real with you, and I've not told anyone else this because I guess there's a stigma attached to it. I wrote it, I finished writing it on the morning of the session. In fact, whilst the boys, the trio, were recording their intro, I think, or the solo, I was still writing the lyrics in the studio. So there is a big span. But in terms of the record, we did one session in 2019. And then COVID hit and my voice changed and I scrapped half of it. And we went back in 2021. 2020. December 2020. And then, did we? I can't remember. Basically, it spanned from 2019 to spring 2022. And I ended up, my voice has changed a lot. I had some vocal health stuff. And also just my voice has developed in a way that it wasn't at when we did the first session. So it's a bit of a patchwork quilt of 3 years.
Right. Do you think it changed? Do you think your voice changed because in COVID you were singing in a different way? You would have been singing, less and not in big auditoriums and to lots of people and things. I wonder if that's...
No, I don't think so. I think my voice changed because I changed, and it was to do with COVID, but sounds pretentious, but there was a dropping in of myself that occurred as I turned 30 and I accepted myself on a deeper level than I ever have. And with my voice, I previously had a tendency to perform in a way that was perhaps unconsciously less authentic than I do now. And I was fearful of using uglier sounds. So when I say uglier sounds, it's just like in inverted commas, things that sort of stretch and go like nasal and pokey, and then some things that go like really deep and like plummy and like reverberant. I was fearful of that, and I used to kind of flatten my sound out and make a more pretty, feminine, approachable, bright, joyful sound. And I did that even with my speaking voice. And I think it's because of just growing up as a woman in this industry. You morph yourself into whatever way is going to be A, the easiest, and B, the most successful. But that was all in my head. And after COVID, when my career got taken away from me, like it did with everyone in the performing arts, I didn't care anymore. So I just really allowed who I truly was to come to the forefront. And that was in my musical choices, in my actual vocalizing, and in my personal life. There was a real shifting of, this is who I am, and this will absolutely be thread through the fabric of everything I do from now on. And that meant I had to re-record some vocals from my album. Really, it genuinely transferred to the physical vocalizing of song.
That's amazing. So it was a cause, it was partly because of the COVID thing, but not isolation. The physical thing. Yeah. That's amazing. I mean, I think it's incredible to hear stories of musicians who have there have been positives from such an awful thing, you know, such a sort of a stopping of every creativity of a lot of people and musicians. I started this podcast in May of 2020 because I had some time on my hands and I thought it'd be interesting, and somebody said to me, well, all these musicians are sitting around at home and they've got time, so why not interview them? And I've spoken to amazing people. I mean, Maria Schneider, you know, she's like
I love
Grammy
her.
you know, I know, and she talks the way you talk, which is she gives zero, you know, really, like
fill in the blank.
Fill in the blank. And I love that, and I love the fact that, you know, she's a lot older than you, she's a bit older than me, you know, but you have that same approach, which is let's do what we do, let's do it the best we possibly can, and if you don't like it, that's fine, go and listen to somebody else.
I tell you what, it is the most freeing thing. The last part of what you just said is something I have not accepted and not believed, yet said out loud for much of my life. And having gone to like conservatoire and been in a variety of successful bands, leaving the pressure of personal success as the forefront, as the pinnacle of being a valid human. I don't know if that sentence made sense, but it did in my head. So if I failed in the eyes of success, right, and numbers and being on stage and having sellouts and whatever, you know, whatever kind of like statistical things that the record industry or the outside world has said equals success. If I didn't reach those goals that I set myself or that I felt was set upon me, then that was a failure. And the biggest shift, which is what you just said, was to know that doing what I do authentically to the best level I can is the success. So when I released this album, I had a little word with myself, because I've been signed to major labels before, and I have done pop projects that have had a sort of taste of that kind of commercial success, right? And that was all very exciting and very dizzying, but it was at a big price, which was that the music was not me. I was sent to fat camp every morning to work with a personal trainer 7 days a week and put on a specialist diet with a nutritionist. I was faking it for the payoff of success and streams and whatever, right? So the day before Meshuga Baby came out, I had a word with myself, and it was like, I felt that kind of, oh God, but what if people don't stream it, and what if people don't like it, and what if it just gets like 1 like on Instagram, etc. Fill in all the variety of validation you can get, and my fear around not having it. And I just was like, no, but I had to have this word with myself. I have stepped out of that. I look at this album, I genuinely love it. It's such an un-British thing to say, but I love this album. I think every song on this album is fun or is emotionally infused. It totally represents me. The trio play amazing. The artwork is hilarious. The title is me. And so I'm not signed to a label, okay, etc., etc. I'm blabbing on a little bit now, but this was the pep talk I had to have. And it concluded with, I love this. I don't care what the response is, because I love it. And so to sort of birth it and surrender it. But yet when I did that, it's been more successful than I ever imagined it had have been. Does that make sense, Hilary?
It does. And
it's so
and I think,
weird.
But that's because that comes across in the music. It comes across both in the choice of music, you know, the choice of tracks, the arrangement of the tracks, the arrangements of the tracks, everything. It comes across as kind of, here we go. This is, you listen to it and that's fine, but your response does not give me the validation. I mean, obviously, you know, it does in some ways.
Well, it does when you've already got it internally.
Right, yeah.
Because I have a confidence that I've never had in my life. Ever. I mean, I used to release music being like, I'll know if it's good after I released it, dependent on the response. But now I'm like, I love this. This is excellent. I hope you enjoy it too. Bye.
Yes. Yeah. And if you do, then great.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very freeing place to get to. It's great to hear that artists I admire so much, like Maria, feel the same way about their work. It's really cool.
Yeah. And I think if you've reached that at the tender age of 31, you know, imagine what you can do in the next 40, 50 years of recording, you know, and you can be an inspiration. You can be an inspiration for younger women, for all of us, because, and that's okay.
I just really resent the polite apologeticness of how the world wants women in the arts and in the whole world to behave. I refuse to participate.
Yeah.
Now. I did, but now I refuse to participate.
Yeah. No, and that comes across. It comes across in this album. It comes across in talking to you. so yeah, good for you.
Yeah.
But not in a patronizing way. And you know, not in a. I think that whole male gaze thing is that as women and as women performers, we tend to need the male acceptance of what we do. We have done in the past, and now 100%. It's okay to kind of go, okay, it's not like that anymore.
I have this fire, this drive in me that came from the stories my mum told me about her experience being a young saxophonist in the world in the 70s,
80s, because she's roughly the same age as me, so definitely the 80s.
I get confused.
We started in the late 70s, but basically our, you know, musical careers were in the 80s. Yeah,
absolutely. So in the 80s, in the early 80s, when my mum was like a late teenager or in her early 20s, I can't remember, sorry mum. And it took a long time over the course of my life for my mother to open up about what happened to her in that period of time. But my mum is a brilliant lead alto player.
Oh yeah.
She is really seriously an excellent musician, and she studied, and she had a terrible time at school, and so the saxophone was her outlet. The saxophone was where she found her home and her place in the world. And so it was the reason why she woke up in the mornings, and she studied and she shed and shed and shed. That's what we call practicing as well. I don't know if anyone else uses that. And then would send her tapes of her playing along to whatever big band chart, Glenn Miller, Count Basie, Ellington, to a variety of big bands at the time, which still had a sort of touring theatre outlet. For example, the Glenn Miller Band or Sid Lawrence or, I don't know, BBC Big Band, whatever. And my mother told me about times when she would leave the E off the end of her name. Her name is Simone, and she'd leave the E off the end of the name when sending the tapes so that it read Simon, right?
Yeah.
And she would fly through the audition process. She would instantly get booked because her sound was so authentic and
Absolutely.
She could read anything. And it would be like, great, when can you come in, Simon? And then it would be, you know, the next Saturday or whatever. And as soon as she walked through the door, it was this shock of, oh, you're a woman. And she actually got told, you know, you're a brilliant lead alto player, but I'd rather have a cardboard cutout on stage than a woman. And in another musical outlet in another orchestra, she was told when she turned up as Simon that, you know, she could stay, you know, they were very disappointed, but she could stay if she wore this little skirt, you know.
Yeah.
So it was either get out of here, we'd rather have a cardboard cutout, or a terrible man on sax than a brilliant woman. And thus kind of formed her life, and it stayed with me. And I feel myself like on a mission to kind of correct that in as loud and unapologetic big way as possible.
That's really interesting. Your mum and I have had conversations about this. One of my earliest memories as a professional sax player was, and your mum and I never worked together because two sax, there were never two girl sax players.
You've got to have either one novelty or none.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or you can be in Ivy Benson's band.
Oh yeah, exactly.
That was absolutely. Those are the only options.
Yeah, they were the only options. And I went for an audition for a big band that was going on a cruise liner. Mm-hmm. And got through, and they did that thing where everybody sort of just came in, and if you were still sitting there at the end still playing, then you were in. And the guy took me aside, the manager took me aside at one point. He went, "I'm really sorry, we're going to have to let you go because there's going to be there are two girl singers and they can share a cabin, and we can't have you on your own in a cabin because of the cost of it." And I said, "Well, I'll share a cabin with a bloke. There are loads of these guys that I know that it would be fine. I'll share a cabin." And they were like, no, you can't do that. So really sorry. And it was like, how is that a thing? How is that
it gives
possible?
me chills.
It's crazy.
And the sad thing is, and I can only speak for my mum, but there would have been so many opportunities like that missed that could have had avenues off the back of them that could have shaped my mum's career in a way that she will never ever get to experience. And I think something that really hurts her is now there seems to be a tokenistic booking of women, which is very, very upsetting for my mum's generation because they missed out, and now often they're now not getting the platform that younger women in jazz are getting. And this really hurts. Yeah. Because there's no correcting of that. So, a trumpet player, Georgina Jackson, and I have started a big band, and it is our absolute mission to create equal, and I really mean equal, not just tokenistic booking of young, sexy, of the moment women and men in jazz, but of everybody who deserves this platforming who perhaps missed it, like my mum's generation. So watch this space for that very, very exciting project. But that story I've shared with you and what you just shared with me is the spark for the creation of the Big Swing.
Brilliant.
Truly diverse. This is something that we see. It's like diverse programming, and like a ton of women in their early 20s. Of course, women in their early 20s deserve to be platformed as well, but it's not actually truly diverse. No.
And brilliant. It's lovely to hear those plans. That's very exciting, and I'll wait to hear about it. Tell me now about what you've got coming up in terms of live shows and that sort of thing.
Well, I've just finished the tour of my Americanish songbook show, which was a celebration of Jewish excellence in jazz and the Great American Songbook, which is not very American at all. It's basically all written by Jews, apart from Cole Porter, who wanted to write like a Jew. Right. But we took that on the road. Yeah, it came to its fruition when the album came out, and we just finished that tour last week. Now it's very much like spot shows, but I'm excited to announce that I am playing at Ronnie Scott's, playing Meshuga Baby on the 21st of September. And in the meantime, bits and bobs as and when they come about. But everyone on my website and on my mailing list is stayed up to date with that. I have the Big Swing, the big band I was just talking about, are launching at the London Jazz Festival on November the 18th. It's going to be absolutely incredible. And in the meantime, I'm very honoured to say that I have been nominated for a Parliamentary Jazz Award, which is something that I dreamt of since I was 16 years old. And if anything else comes up, just check out the website or the mailing list, emmasmithmusic.co.uk, and all the socials and stuff. I'm an avid Instagram user.
Brilliant. Fabulous. That was amazing, Emma. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time.
You're so, so welcome. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Open her eyes to another day.
Well, that was one of my favourite episodes.
From right to wrong, singing a winter song.
You're listening now to Emma's composition, Ballad of a Wayward Woman. She's certainly got so much to say, both in her music and in her attitude. And I'm so excited to see how she gets on in the Parliamentary Jazz Awards, which is out any minute. And also to see her at Ronnie Scott's. That's on the 21st of September. And then the Big Swing as part of the London Jazz Festival on the 18th of November. So I hope you enjoyed listening to that episode of Harmonious World. Please do share and review. It really does help. The statistics are going up rapidly for Harmonious World, which is great. Thank you to those of you who've been listening to this since the beginning. Thank you to those of you who've only just recently found me. So this is season 9, episode 112 of Harmonious World. I'm Hilary Robertson, and I really hope you can share what you're good at and make this world a little bit more harmonious.
Walking on broken glass, watching the years roll past, time has run. Old but not yet wise, you're sowing your own demise. The woman's war will never be won.
Thank you for listening to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook, and it's a great delight to bring this series of discussions with musicians and composers and writers and all sorts of people to you. Obviously, there's no point in having a podcast if people aren't listening, and I'm very grateful to my listeners for doing so. Thanks also to Joe English for composing and performing this new theme tune. So wherever you get your podcast, you can leave a review. You can share this with your friends and family, either as a link or on social media and that sort of thing. I'd be really grateful for that. Don't forget that you can subscribe now. There's a link wherever you get your podcasts. So have a great week, and please remember why I started this, which is just to try and make the world a little more harmonious. Thanks for listening to Harmonious World.